Vaisnava K by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura. My dear mind, what kind of Vaisnava are you? Simply for false prestige and a material reputation you sit in a solitary place and pretend to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, but this is all cheating. My dear mind, why are you so proud of being a Vaisnava? Your solitary worship and chanting of the holy name of the Lord are based on a desire for cheap popularity, and therefore your chanting of the holy name is only a pretension. Such an ambition for a cheap reputation can be compared to the stool of a hog, because such popularity is another extension of the influence of Maya. My dear mind, you are attached to wealth, and due to Maya's influence you want to use your money simply for the gratification of your material senses, but by this you will get no eternal satisfaction. You should use the wealth at your disposal in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Madhava, Krishna, and then only can you experience transcendental bliss from wealth. Your lusty desires to enjoy beautiful women are not an abode where you can find real shelter. The supreme lover is Yadava, Krishna. He is the supreme enjoyer and actual owner of everyone's love. Offer all your love and devotion to Lord Krishna and you will be completely satisfied. My dear mind, beware of your desire to attain material reputation. It is misleading you with its attractive vision like an oasis of green trees, but it is simply a mirage in the desert of this world of repeated birth and death. It will cause your utter spiritual destruction. Remember how Ravana, the powerful demon, was bewildered due to false pride, and in spite of all his efforts to achieve temporary material prominence he was destroyed by Raghava, Lord Ramacandra. The only position you should desire is to become a true Vaisnava, a pure devotee of the Lord. Give all your care and attention for obtaining this. If instead you neglect to purely worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, due to your offenses, for all your hard endeavors your life will simply be hellish. My dear mind, what kind of Vaisnava are you? In the name of solitary worship you are simply engaged in criticizing and committing offenses against the Vaisnavas. You have become envious towards the pure devotees of Lord Krishna. Instead of tasting the nectar of being a real Vaisnava you are simply suffering due to your desire to gain flickering material prestige and position. Then, in spite of your fallen condition, why do you remain so proud of your solitary worship? Now you should try to be a real Vaisnava. To be a pure devotee of Krishna is actually the most glorious position anyone can achieve. If you really desire to achieve perfection, then give up this practice of solitary worship and in the association of devotees practice pure unmotivated devotional service. In the sincere practice of pure devotional service there is no influence of Maya. My dear mind, why are you so proud of being a pure devotee of Krishna? A pure devotee of the Lord performs favorable devotional service in his constitutional relationship as an eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. A pure devotee's desire to serve Lord Krishna is completely pure and without the influence of even a trace of material motives. Your practice of solitary worship is simply cheating, but actual pure devotional service is ever free from material duplicity and hypocrisy stemming from the material cheating propensity. My dear mind, beware of both the Pratishta Kandali, the treacherous witch who enchants and bewilders devotees with a desire for cheap popularity, as well as the Naranattajali, the deadly net of solitary worship, which traps devotees in Maya's illusion when they leave the association of devotees to perform solitary devotional service. Know it that both are different aspects of the most hellish material existence known as Raurava. My dear mind, you want me to give up the congregational chanting of Lord Krishna's holy names to practice solitary worship. Then you want me to anoint myself with the material desires for temporary position and cheap fame. How can you consider these illusory activities of Maya to have even the slightest spiritual value or glory in them? Don't commit the offense of falsely imitating the devotional service of the great spiritual master Madhavendra Puri. He was never a false imitation, but was a fully realized liberated soul. He traveled to spread the glories of Lord Krishna and continuously chanted the holy name of the Lord without the slightest desire for cheap popularity and reputation. Kindly remember his great transcendental qualities. My dear mind, your desire for cheap reputation can be compared to the stool of a hog. You are proud of being a Vaisnava, but your actual behavior is less than an ordinary civilized human being. Controlled by envy towards true Vaisnavas, you have secretly been relishing trying to squeeze out some temporary material happiness by gratifying your material desires. How do you remain so proud in spite of your hypocrisy, after having abandoned the eternal nectar of the Hare Krishna Sankirtana movement? My dear rascal mind, now it is evident why you have been spreading the glories of solitary devotional service. You have been acting against the Vaisnava principles and simply cheating to hide the real facts. You have acted just like a false yogi whose only purpose is to mislead and cheat others. To save yourself from this illusion, you should remember and carefully study the teachings that Sanatana Goswami has so mercifully given in this regard for practicing devotional service properly in Krishna consciousness. My dear mind, you should never, under any circumstances, allow yourself to forget the two instructions of Sanatana Goswami. Constantly engage yourself in loudly chanting the glories of the holy names of Lord Krishna. Never consider dry renunciation and yukta vairagya, appropriate renunciation, to be equal. Do not confuse actions appropriate for a conditioned soul with the activities of an eternally liberated soul. Never think that everything is one without difference. The desire for enjoying cheap fame and material distinction acts like a ferocious tigress who devours one's Krishna consciousness. Similarly dangerous are the desires for enjoyment of wealth and women. Someone who has transcended both of these materialistic desires through devotional service is indeed a real Vaishnava. Someone with such Krishna-conscious characteristics is truly unattached to material life. He is actually a pure devotee of Lord Krishna. The material bondage to the repetition of birth and death is easily defeated by a pure devotee of the Lord like him. Material facilities and gratification of the senses experienced while acting for self-preservation or in the faithful execution of one's duties in Krishna consciousness are not the cause of fall down into materialistic consciousness. Rather, such a purely engaged devotee is truly detached from sense gratification. What more shall I say? The pure devotee acts in Krishna consciousness without attachment to the objects of the senses, remaining conscious of his relationship as the eternal servitor of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The pure devotee is fixed in his attachment to rendering pure devotional service to the Lord, and thus he sees all apparently material objects of sense enjoyment as non-different divine energies of Lord Madhava, Krishna, e. They are seen in terms of how they can be utilized in the devotional service to Lord Madhava, Krishna, and not according to their material sense gratificatory value. The devotee who engages his material possessions in the service of Lord Krishna while regulating his material activities of sense gratification according to the injunctions of the revealed sastras, refer to previous verse, is actually a yukta vairagi or a devotee situated in full and appropriate renunciation. He is certainly most fortunate. Even while living in the midst of the material world, whatever opulences he possesses and whatever actions he performs are all aspects of the spiritual opulence and potency of Hari, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, if someone is outwardly chanting the holy names of the Lord, or even if he is externally engaged in kirtana, or preaching the glories of the holy name, but actually is motivated by pratishta desires, is under the control of desires to enhance his own material reputation or temporary position, then whatever apparent opulences or influence he may have achieved by his efforts are simply the products of cheating, and therefore simply temporary products of Maya, the illusory energy. The Mayavadis, impersonalists, mentality is totally separate from Krishna consciousness. Although they are fallen souls conditioned by the material nature, due to illusion they imagine they have achieved liberation from material birth and death, and due to their false pride they commit the greatest offense of blaspheming pure devotees of the Lord. My dear mind, you are a servant of Lord Krishna. Certainly your desire is to achieve pure loving devotional service to Lord Krishna. Then why do you call me to be trapped in this deadly cage of solitary devotional service, Niryana Bhayana? Why do you want me to imitate the Mayavadi impersonalists' practice of making a false show of renunciation and committing offenses against the pure devotees of Lord? Someone who falsely renounces objects as material, which can actually be utilized in devotional service to Lord Krishna, is known as a Falgu Vairagi. Due to false pride, he claims to be a great renunciate. However, by his practice of dry renunciation, a Falgu Vairagi is never able to become a Vaisnava, a pure devotee of Lord Krishna. Discarding the eternal shelter of pure devotional service to the lotus feet of Guru and Lord Krishna, the Falgu Vairagi may practice what may appear to be Krishna consciousness in his separate or solitary home away from the Krishna consciousness association of the society of devotees, but what transcendental result does he achieve for all his efforts? Whatever so-called Krishna-conscious result he is achieving is simply a form of material illusion with no actual eternal Krishna-conscious value. My dear mind, now, with determination, let us remain eternally in the service of the servant of Srimati Radharani, the spiritual embodiment of the purest love for Krishna. Give up every last trace of attachment for the vicious snake of material desire for sense gratification, subtle or gross. Give up all desires for achieving cheap fame or some position of temporary material importance through chanting the holy names of Krishna, as with these material desires one cannot realize the transcendental glories of congregational chanting of the holy names of Lord Krishna in Sankirtana. My dear mind, completely give up these illusory attachments and totally surrender yourself in the service of Srimati Radharani's eternal devotees. Why shall we leave the transcendental association of confidential devotees to engage in the cheating process of solitary worship, nirjana bhajana? The Vrajavasis, eternal associates of Krishna in Vindavana, considered by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be the best and most perfect devotees, personal treasurers preaching the glories of Lord Krishna. They are always glorifying Krishna. They never desire any cheap popularity or temporary material position, which is hankered after by the living dead. These eternally liberated devotees perform the confidential service of preaching the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His holy name, because they possess real compassion in the eternal life of Krishna consciousness. Completely free from all motives for personal material reputation and temporary influence, the pure devotees are completely and irrevocably bound to Lord Krishna through ties of loving devotional service. This Taita Dasa, His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura, the humble servitor of the all-merciful Srimati Radharani, simply desires to be absorbed in the nectar of spreading the glories of Lord Krishna's holy names. My dear mind, now let us loudly chant the holy names of Krishna so we can continuously remain in the ocean of transcendental nectar. The congregational chanting of the holy names of Krishna awakens the transcendental quality of natural spontaneous loving remembrance of Lord Krishna, including the Lord's form, qualities and pastimes. At that moment the confidential realization and pure practice of solitary loving devotional service to their Lordship Sri Sri Radha Krishna is possible.